March 14, 2012, my son Thomas lost his battle with the disease of addiction. I now belong to a club that no parent should ever belong to. Do you know the signs? Do you know the trends that children are doing in today's world? Do you know the signs and symptoms? Do you know the signs and symptoms of drug abuse? I want to empower and educate Long Islanders by bringing a force of professionals and how to prevent the disease of addiction. Long Island in Crisis. Good evening and welcome to Long Island in Crisis. This show is dedicated to the education empowerment for all people struggling with their loved ones and the disease of addiction, and especially for people who are struggling with the disease of addiction. I hope that we can bring some hope, some education, some resources, and just an awareness to everything that's going on in our society. There is an epidemic in the United States, certainly with Long Island being hit extremely difficult. Every day a family wakes up without a loved one here on Long Island, and we are losing a generation of young people, especially. You know, I lost my son 3 years ago, and we need to make a change. So my guest tonight is Anthony Rizzuto, and it's always my pleasure to have you here, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we had a lot of things happen with FIST, Families in Supportive Treatment, and we need to encourage more people to come out and join us so they can get the education and the empowerment and maybe some understanding, because there needs to be a lot of understanding with the disease of addiction. Unfortunately, I've had quite the education, and I guess, you know, I wasn't meant to have the knowledge that I have now back then, and that's just the way it is, and that's okay. But now, if I can give that to other parents or other loved ones, so important, because it is not a choice that anybody makes. Right.
You know, I commend you and the other families. We were talking the other day about this, how, you know, you guys have suffered a tragic loss in your life, and I think that any human being who has ever had a child can totally just relate with the idea of, oh my God, what would I do if that happened to me? Yeah. And the fact that, you know, people react to situations like that differently. And we have a bunch of incredible human beings, not only here in Long Island, but all around the country.
Absolutely.
That have lost their loved ones and have said, you know what, I refuse to let this go this way. I think about recently the Assembly Minority Heroin Task Force that we both testified at, and Karen, you know, went up there and told a story, and you know, it's interesting to see the process, right? So it's a process, you know, you first get the news and you're in shock, and then you go through this stage, this grief and anger and hurt and loss in these different stages, and then you come to the point where you want to take action. And just watching that happen. But I'll tell you that one of the things that's clear to me, and that I'm starting to become even more clear about, is that sometimes as a professional that works in this field, or even people who have the ability to make some differences, don't really get it. They don't understand that as a family member, when you first find out that your loved one has a problem, you don't have a clue as to where to go and what to do. And I'm so grateful that you do a show like this here, and that there's so much movement in being able to get education out there, because the fact of the matter is that a person that struggles with the disease of addiction often is very resistant to getting any help.
And that's an understatement.
And by the time the loved ones know about it, it's been going on for a while.
For a long time, yeah.
So now when the family finds out about it, or the loved one, I keep saying family because, you know, in the work that I do with families, there's been a shift over the years, and I would say that on any given Monday night, you know, I do education
Yes.
series and support groups. I would say that probably about 80 to 85% of the families that attend my support groups and education groups are parents of a person 17 to the age of 27. And what happens is when they first find out, they don't know what to do, where to go, they're hurt, they're in crisis mode, and right away.
And this is their child. Now
Yeah.
coming to the age of 17 where you want to see them graduate and go on to bigger and better things and start their life.
Right.
So there's such a host of emotions that go on
Absolutely.
right there.
Right.
Because of course, as a parent, and you're a parent, what did I do wrong?
Right. Right.
What didn't I do?
Right.
Or what could I have done better?
And what happens is the family, the first thing they want to do is they want the person to get help. And when they confront the person or they approach the person, sometimes it comes from a place of love. Please, I beg you, you got to get help. Then sometimes it comes from a place of anger. But either way, they're trying to get the loved one to accept help. And often the loved one doesn't want help. But even if they do want help, the family sometimes don't have any idea of where to send them. So I think shows like this, and I think the steps that are being taken to try and educate, you mentioned FIST, you know, putting on these forums and raising awareness. And I have to tell you, to me, engaging the families and educating the families is so important because I know your love, and I'm a big believer in it, for prevention. And the reality of it is that we are a reactive society.
Yes.
So what happens is a parent of a 8-year-old, a 10-year-old sees a flyer for a forum, that doesn't pertain to me. I don't need to be there. Thank God we're okay over here. The problem is that if we don't do certain things when our children are younger, sometimes we can possibly raise their vulnerableness, you know, to this.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and when I speak at all different treatment facilities and all the patients that are there,
Right.
and the age at which they tell me, so I always ask the question, if you could go back and speak to yourself, what age would you be?
Right.
Overwhelmingly, it's 12 years
Yep,
old,
yep.
sometimes 10.
Right.
Stephen Dodge was here a few weeks ago and had his first beer, a sip of a beer, at age 10 with his grandfather. Now, how many of us have done that?
Right.
But he started drinking.
Yeah.
Right then and there, it was off to the races. You don't know if your child's hardwired for addiction.
Right. And I know that you and I have had this conversation. I know we're friends of Kim Lauby from Hugs, and you know, and I was talking to Nancy one time, and we were talking about these scenarios about how sometimes, not even knowingly, the messages that we're sending off. You know, and we talked about the scenario where there is a birthday party for a 3-year-old, and you got all the kids around the table, and the kid, I don't know, they still do the cone hats with the little elastic around the face, and they're getting ready to cut the cake. And then if you pan back and you take a look at the adults around them, they have a beer in their hand. Now look, I'm not the alcohol police, but the fact of the matter is, any parent knows how their kids watch them like hawks. And this is where they learn.
How many 1-year-old babies can control your iPad, iPhone? That's the way they, that's what they know now.
Right.
So if they know how to swipe just by watching you swipe, they know that when I get older, I need to have a beer or a glass of wine in order to have fun. That's what adults do.
Yep, it's a social event.
It's a social event, and without alcohol in the mix, and that's just their awareness. It doesn't make it true or not true. It just makes that maybe you need to show them how to have a great party without alcohol, put them to bed, and then nobody is trying to tell you not to do what you want to do. Just be very aware of what you're doing.
And I think there's two other pieces to that. One is what we just talked about the environment. And again, the parents not even looking at it from that perspective, because this is a social norm, right?
Absolutely.
So now, right, what happens that when the kid turns on the TV and associated with a football game is a particular kind of beer, or associated with the girls dancing on the beach and the DJ out there, and it's a commercial for a beer. So they make this connection about fun, having a good time, being a real, so to speak, man, or being a real woman, and connecting it with alcohol. So that to me is part of it, right? And here's where the big issue comes in, because I think people that have a glass of wine, let's just say with dinner, there are a lot of people that drink alcohol that it's not a problem for. It's a social thing. They'll have it with I'm from the Italian culture, and it's very common that people have a glass of wine with meals, depending on what the meal is, if it's going to be red wine or it's going to be white wine. The problem is this, that we don't know who has that inability to moderate how much they drink, because there is science upon science that shows that the brain of one person reacts very differently than the brain of the other. There's a lot of science that shows that addiction is a disease. And in fact, there was a study that was done where they took two individuals and they put the brains under PET scans. And they watched the action in live time. And they gave both individuals Ritalin. And they took a look at the way the brain was impacted. This particular individual had a history of addiction. This one didn't. They gave both of them Ritalin, and then they watched. Same dosage. Everything. This brain lit up. This brain didn't. When they interviewed them afterwards, they said, so tell me, how was that? This person said, oh, that was great. I loved that. That was awesome. And this person said, I really... So here is two human beings, right? And both of them given the same substance, and you can see, without them opening their mouth, you can watch the brain lighting up in this person. So what that says to us is that says that people have a different reaction to substances. And, you know, I try sometimes to explain it to family members, the person who has an addiction to peanuts, or the person that has an addiction to fish, right? I personally don't have those addictions. I can eat peanuts, I can eat fish, but I have friends who do have that addiction. And a peanut could lead to death. So does it make them a weak person? Does it make them a bad person? Absolutely not. It's just the way their body is constructed.
Absolutely. So, you know, with insurance, the way they handle the disease of addiction, if it is a disease, as cancer and diabetes isn't treated in 28 days or 20 visits. Right. So why is it that the disease of addiction doesn't allow for relapses or what they call failure? How do you measure? So if someone dies from cancer, we say the disease killed them. Certainly not the doctor and the treatment.
Right, right.
But when someone relapses in addiction, oh, well, treatment doesn't work.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, and that's something that I've been speaking about a lot lately, because if you go back to years ago, a person who was suffering with an addiction to heroin, treatment was like 2 years, 17 months to 2 years. Now, the reality of it is you go into a detox, first of all, days. If you're even approved, right, and then they try to get you out within 3 to 5 days, and then you hope that you can get them to a rehab, right, which even at best case scenario, you get in 30 days, but I can tell you that is not the norm.
That is not
so they're requiring people to do this on an outpatient basis. They're giving them another drug to help them to deal with coming off of this drug, and not to say that it's necessarily a bad thing, because as a clinician, I want to have every tool available.
Absolutely.
But we know that the disease of addiction affects human beings on a bio-psycho-social level. It's not about one particular part of it. And to your point, when you're going to give me a person who struggles with an illness that needs to be in treatment for a year, 2 years, and you give me 30 days with them and tell me that it failed, that's injustice. There's something very wrong with that.
There's something very wrong with
that is a problem, because unfortunately, and I've said this over and over again, I just said it this morning at a meeting, that the people who are trained, so I had to go for a year to prepare to become a credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor. I had to have a year of specific schooling. I had to do 6,000 hours of experience before they would even let me.
Approximately 5 years?
It was 3 years full-time.
Full-time.
Just to be able to sit to take the test. Then I had to pass a written test, and I had to pass an oral test in order to get what we call a CASAC. Then to go for my master's in social work, I needed to have a 4-year degree and then go on to get a master's degree, and incorporated in that was a 2-year internship. That's what I had to do to be equipped to be able to provide services for people. As a person like that, who had to have all this education and experience to be able to help a person, and then I'm not the one determining the level of care that this individual needs?
That's what's maddening. So you know that I have said that many a time with my son's ashes.
Right. I just want to finish for our viewers so they understand where I'm going. So just so that you understand, when that happens, so when that person finally says, okay, I'll go, and you bring them to a treatment professional, myself, other agencies, we've got some great agencies in Long Island, and they do an evaluation, and the treatment professional, with all this experience and education, says, listen, based on what you're reporting, you really need to be in a detox for somewhere between 3 and 7 days, and then we're going to follow that with an inpatient rehab, right? So what happens?
What would you? I'm going to just because what would your ideal number of days be? Would it be 90 days? Would that be fair to say?
If we were talking, first of all, it's on a case-by-case basis.
Of course.
Right? So you have to take a look at, like I've had situations where people had child care to take care of, so they needed to be inpatient, but they couldn't be inpatient. They needed to take care of a child. So there's a lot of different scenarios, but ideally what the research shows, not a specific amount of time, but what the research shows is the longer that you have a person engaged in treatment, the better the outcomes. Not only does it show that, but it also shows that the earlier that you get them engaged in the process, and we know some of the studies have shown that the brain, we used to think that the brain was fully developed at a lot younger age. We thought that by 18 the brain was fully developed. What we're seeing now in males, in a lot of cases, the brain is not fully developed until about 25 years old. And the last part that develops is the prefrontal cortex. That's the part that makes the decisions. So here we're in an environment where, first of all, we have become a society that there is a pill for everything, right? Having to deal with rejection, pain, there's a pill for everything.
Absolutely.
So we've come to this place where, unfortunately, I believe that we have not equipped our children, right, to be able to deal and keep up with the fast pace of the world. I grew up in the city. I grew up, we would go outside, we would play until the sun came down.
And then
Dad
you went
would
home.
come home from work, you'd go home, you'd eat, you'd do your homework, you'd spend time with the family, maybe watch Happy Days, maybe watch Laverne and Shirley, and I'll even go home. And you went to bed. But today, unfortunately, it's a very different world, and the amount of anxiety that we see in young people, and there's a theory out there, I haven't read all the research on it, but there's a theory that I wonder what role the incidents that happened on 9/11 have in what we're experiencing today. Because the sense of security, that's one thing that we lost that day, besides the precious lives that we lost that day, and the heroes that lost their life trying to save others. One of the things that we lost that day was A, life as we knew it, and B, this sense of security. When you lose that sense of security, people deal with that and react to that very differently. If you look at the rate of anxiety in young people today, it's much higher than it was in the past.
But you know, if we just, even without 9/11, which I agree with you, I think that has had an impact on the way young people view the world. But our teenagers are bombarded with social media. They have a smartphone. They can be bullied by anybody, anywhere, anytime. And they're not going to tell you about it. And they don't even know who this person is that is saying all these things about them. And talking to, and you know Sarah also, who was beautiful young woman, had feelings of such insecurity and such low self-esteem, and also said that when she was 9, when she tasted something, knew that that was going to help her fix things. So the point is, and that's why I love prevention too, is if we don't start to engage our 6-year-olds today to equip them with coping skills and a feeling of self-worth and all of those things, that how can they handle the world at age 12 or age 13?
Absolutely. There was a young man that spoke at an event I was at, and he said, I don't know if he was about 19 years old, and he was in recovery. And what he said is, parents, you think you know, but you don't know. When I'm upstairs in my room and I'm on my computer, do you know I might have just got ripped to shreds from somebody in China that was abusing me via the online chat and stuff like that? And you know, look, being that age is a tough age to begin with because you're transitioning, right?
Oh my goodness,
so
yeah.
Being that age is really tough to begin with. And then when you throw on top of that, right, these additional things. I saw something written a while ago about how many rapes, murders, and so on that a young person has seen by the age of 18, whether it be through the internet, whether it be through movies, whether it be through, you know, just
TV.
what they're exposed to.
Absolutely.
You know, you talk about TV, right? I go back and I think about when I was a kid. What was, first of all, there was no 200 channels.
No.
It was 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, and 11.
And 13,
you know,
if you were desperate.
Right. And honestly, I used to like wrestling, so Lucha Libre was on 41.
Okay.
But you know, you had some limited options, and the shows that were there were very different. I mean, there were certain rules that said that past this time, you know, before this time, you can't show certain things. So I think that, you know, the world has changed. You know, the Pope was here last week, and I loved some of the things that he said, and he emphasized a lot on two things. One, on family.
Oh, yes.
And two, on being our brother's keeper. You know, and
the golden rule. Treat other people as you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And if everyone just was cognizant of that fact every day, and you did one nice thing every day.
A better world.
And that could be holding the door for an old woman going into the store.
Yep. There's a story that was out a while ago via emails and stuff. And it was a young man that was kind of having a hard time in school. The family had moved from one area to another, really didn't fit in, was kind of being bullied, and had come to the decision that he didn't want to do this anymore. And he started taking all his books and was going home with all his books. And some of the kids came over and on his way home knocked all the books out of his hands. And then another kid came over and helped him with his books. And they ended up talking. And they ended up hitting off a friendship. And later down a year or two, when graduation comes, he talks about how that day he wanted to end his life. Wow. Because he felt that he didn't have anybody in his life and it didn't matter and that he couldn't take it anymore. That one person helping him pick up his books made a complete difference. So to your point of how we can make difference, and sometimes we don't even know the difference that we make.
No, we don't.
You know, this kid didn't go to make a friendship with this guy. This kid was going by, saw somebody taking advantage of him, went over, said, you know, let me help you with that, helped him up with that. The kid saw that somebody cared about him at that moment. And that was something that took a step in making a difference. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, the messages that we get a lot of time is how much money can you make, how much power can you have, how much this and how much that. And I think we've lost, you know, just that humanness, about looking out for each other.
But to your point last week watching the Pope, who has such a high-powered job, let's call it, but he keeps it very humble. But we all need to remember that he's a man.
Absolutely.
So on Sunday, all those people, where are they? Are they in church? Or are they talking to their higher power?
Right.
Because he also answers to his higher power.
Absolutely.
So I would love to see people take that feeling from him that they got, because he only answers to that. He bases every move that he makes on is this what you want me to do
Right.
today?
Right. And that's, you know, that's something that I think that we've gotten away from. And
We
that's,
have.
this is just my own personal beliefs. I get asked a lot of times, Anthony, how do you think we got here? And I said, look, without getting too personal, I said, if I had to put it in one sentence, I personally believe, and I'm 54 years old, and one of the things that I've seen is a breakdown in family and a breakdown in faith. And unfortunately, that to me is something that has impacted us. But then I see the way the world is like going at a record pace, you know, and you look, it's, you know, people that have so much, you know, and don't look out for the person that doesn't have. And, you know, it's really tough. But, you know, getting back to this idea of addiction, we're in a position now where, and we got some really nice things coming up in Washington.
And I'm going to hold you on that thought,
Okay.
and we'll be right back after this message.
Stretching under sedation or manipulation under anesthesia is a very gentle, very precise procedure to very slowly release any scar tissue that is formed as a result of a traumatic injury. Many people ask, how does this work? Will I get hurt? Will you stretch me too far? We only stretch the body part to its normal range of motion. After completing the post-MUA rehabilitation program, it's very common that our patients say to us, hey, I can play ball with my kid again. Hey, I can bowl again. Hey, I can enjoy hiking again. This is what makes it rewarding to us as practitioners.
Hi, I'm Tatiana, and I'm a person in long-term recovery from heroin addiction. It was really, really hard, waking up in the morning, not knowing what to do, needing my next bag. I was so lost, but I'm here today to tell you that there is a solution. When I was in my active addiction, I didn't realize that there was another way of life. I thought that that was the only way, because it felt so good to get high, but it was all an illusion, and I didn't realize that. But today, being 4 years clean and sober, my life is absolutely amazing. I'm able to travel, I don't need a drink, I don't need a drug. I'm just happy being with myself. I couldn't understand for many years why was I doing this? It's because I was an addict, but I didn't know it. Today, many kids are becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol, but they don't know exactly what they're getting into until they're out of it. And it's our job, it's my job, to stand for these kids, stand for their recovery, and fight for their addiction. So I'm the president of Onward Forever, and I provide recovery services and support. And we're here to help. We're here to just listen. Anything that we can do to help. If you need me, this is how you get a hold of me. Please call 347-244-1550. 347-244-1550. I developed this company to help you, our families, and our community to fight this crisis on Long Island and in our nation. Thank you.
Coach is a full-service limousine and party bus company. Family-owned and operated, we are an industry leader with over 25 years of experience in providing best-in-class luxury transportation for your special event. Whether it's your precious wedding day, an all-day wine tour out east, your high school prom, that special birthday, or just an amazing night on the town, our professional chauffeurs stand ready to ensure your special event is truly special. Galaxy Luxury Coach has one of the largest and modern party bus fleets in the New York area. Our party buses are simply nightclubs on wheels. Concert sound systems, light shows, lasers and strobes, multicolor LED lighting brilliantly lights your party bus inside and out. For corporate and more laid-back events, we will cater to your specific needs and requests. What sets Galaxy aside from all others in the luxury transportation industry is our attention to detail in customizing our services to your special event. At Galaxy, it's all about you and your guests. Galaxy customers return time and time again because they know they can trust Galaxy to help deliver those lifetime memorable moments. Step aboard and let your Galaxy experience begin. Galaxy.
Dunkin' Donuts are always fresh. I made the donuts. We make them at least twice every day. Time to make the donuts. Not a few kinds, like supermarket. Made the donuts. Time to make the donuts. But up to 52 varieties. The donuts. Time to make the donuts. I made the donuts. Dunkin' Donuts, up to 52 varieties, fresh day and night. No supermarket can say.
Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis with my special guest, Anthony Rizzuto. So before the break, now you can continue on with your thought.
No, we were talking, so, you know, like
Yeah.
a big part of this, what, in my opinion, what needs to happen is that we need change, right? So we're in the midst of an epidemic.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be getting better quickly enough, right? And
I think
every
it's
day.
5 steps forward and 6 steps back.
It's just, you know, like, and the first thing I'll talk about, so this weekend there's a lot happening in terms of
Yes.
the advocacy front. So on Saturday there's the Fed Up rally, and, you know, to talk a little bit about the Fed Up rally, you know, there's a bunch of special people got together, and I'm not a spokesman for them by any means, but I am somebody who attended both of the rallies, and I will be attending this year, and but I commend them. I commend them for coming together, a whole bunch of people, whether it be families who had lost a loved one, families who were affected from it, professionals that work in the field, doctors, and said, hey, we can't continue on this path. And, you know, and their focus, right, was about the overprescribing of medications being put out there and causing part of the problem that we're seeing.
And still causing.
And, you know, so that first one was about, you know, the schedule, you know, bringing the drug up from one schedule to another. And basically what that means, without getting technical, because I don't know enough about it to get technical, but basically if a drug is, let's say, Schedule 3, there are certain things in place which make it easier to be able to prescribe and people to be able to get it. When it becomes a Schedule 2, it becomes a little tougher. So there was a push towards that. So, you know, the first year it was meeting outside the Capitol, and you had Schumer and Munchin and a whole bunch of different people, Dr. Klodny and a bunch of other people speaking, and then marching over and being able to...
the White House?
No, the first year it wasn't the White House. I think the first year it might have
Did
been
they
the
go to the
FDA.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the FDA. But that seems to be like where the target has been, because, you know, the FDA, unfortunately, has approved drugs that their own advisory committee said
no
don't
to.
approve,
Right.
like Zohydro, right? What I was told was that their advisory committee, you know, voted 11-2 against it, and they went ahead and approved it. And that was the outrage, because that is a drug that unfortunately did not have any protective factors. So when I say protective, right, so what they do with some of these opiates to prevent people from being able to crush them and sniff them is they put acetaminophen, or they'll put different things in there to be able to stop it from being crushed. With Zohydro, it was so much more powerful, and there wasn't any of that in it. So that was a concern. So anyway, the last 2 years, they've been getting together. This will be the 3rd year. This year it's going to be at the Lincoln Memorial, and there'll be people from all around the country meeting up there, and then the march will go over to the White House. And last year we marched over to the White House, which was a great turnout. They do a great job. They got a great lineup of speakers. And I have to tell you, you know, I was on their website today just taking a look at a few things, and in both scenarios, there was a change made shortly after the Fed Up rally.
Excellent.
In 2013, there was a change, and in 2014, there was a change. So hopefully we can stay on that course. Absolutely. So that's Saturday, and then Sunday there is the first ever Unite to Face Addiction, which, you know,
Sheryl Crow, Joe Walsh,
Steven
Tyler, a lot of big headline artists that are in recovery.
And you know, like, the fact that those artists are coming out, that's a great thing. But really the message is there's 23 million people that struggle with addiction. I was just looking at their site. This is per their site. And 23.5 million people in recovery. And, you know, unfortunately, there is a stigma associated with it.
Yes.
So people that struggle with the disease aren't quick to come out. In fact, there are a ton of celebrities that have experienced this either themselves or in their family and are not quick to talk about it. And that's something that we hope will change, and it is changing. But this Unite to Face Addiction has got an incredible platform of what they're looking to do and about changing the, God bless you.
Thank you.
About changing the conversation about how addiction is looked upon. So for example, you know, we've been looking at it from the lens of a criminal justice problem,
Yes.
as opposed to a public health concern. And you know, when you look at it from a criminal justice situation, right, how has that worked for us? How has it worked for us taking people that struggle with the disease of addiction and put them in jail? Now, with that being said, people break
Long
the
Island,
law.
it is about $50,000 a year to house them. Would that
Yes,
be?
yes, no, that's an accurate, that's a number I've heard from
Right,
the Sheriff's Department, I believe. But people break the law, of course, there's got to be a consequence to it. But if the goal is to try and reform a person, it hasn't proved to be real successful as a deterrent to a person not using drugs anymore. So there's
Absolutely.
been these alternatives to incarceration. So I'm really excited, you know, about what they do in the drug courts, right?
Well, they do diversion. They do give people an opportunity now to turn their life around.
Right, right.
And if you continue going down the same path, well, then the consequences
Yeah,
will be yours.
And should be there.
And should be.
And so,
exactly.
But like, for instance, you know, one of the drug courts that I've had dealings with, they have a whole treatment team.
Yes.
They have a social worker. They have a case act. They have a probation. They have a whole team that supports the person. And pretty much what they do is they try to connect the person with treatment, and they give them support and the opportunity to be able to succeed. However, if the person doesn't do what they need to do, they have no problem saying, you know what, maybe you need 7 days in jail to think about what you want to do with yourself. And the difference between, like, the drug court, because I do a lot of work with the families, the difference is that the families sometimes want to hold the loved one accountable, but the loved one has developed an innate ability to manipulate the family.
Woo-hoo!
Because
Big time.
when the loved one wants to use, they can't say, Mom, can you give me $100? I feel like getting wasted today.
Right.
They can't do that. So they have to come up with, oh yeah, Johnny needs me to give him here.
I'm going to go get a haircut. You know how you always like me to cut my hair?
And I got to get shoes too.
I'm gonna
And
get, right.
yeah.
I'm going to get
I'll pay you back.
sneakers. I promise. I'm going to get a job. You know, I'll look good.
Right.
I'll have shoes, and you know.
So one of the things that's nice about the drug court is that you know, the participants in the drug court kind of realize that, wow, you know, they say what they mean and they mean what they say. So there's an expectation, and when I veer from that expectation, they hold me accountable. And that's something that a lot of times families have a hard time with, because I love my son, I love my daughter. I don't want to see them, you know.
All children have an innate way of manipulating us and making, you know,
Pull the heartstrings.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So when you give that judgment call to someone that is not personally involved, well, you can't pull those strings anymore.
Right. Right.
And then there is an actual consequence.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with your parents anymore or your loved ones.
Absolutely.
It has to do with you and the judge,
Yep.
you and your probation officer, and they don't want to hear your song and dance.
Right,
They're
right.
not going to listen to you. You may try your song and dance, but you're going to end up.
Well, you're going to realize quickly that, wow, it's not having the same effect with them that it did. It's not working with them. But going back to Unite to Face Addiction, so there's supposed to be tens of thousands of people. I was on the site today, 600 different organizations coming together, people coming from all over the place to meet up in Washington. And the idea behind it is to say, we have a voice, and we need to change the conversation. And they have a whole platform in place. I would encourage everybody to go to the website, facingaddiction.org, and also to the Fed Up Rally. If you Google both of them, one is a Fed Up Rally and the other one is Unite to Face Addiction. If you could make it down there, it would be an awesome thing. I will tell you, it is an incredible experience. In fact, I shared
You're
this.
going to have incredible music. So
Oh,
that,
the
that
music
goes without
is,
saying.
yeah, the music is absolutely, but, you know, I will tell you, and I think I mentioned this to you before, you know, we did that recovery walk, and quite honestly, the Fed Up rally that I attended 2 years in a row, I would say planted the seed. It was the Fed Up rally 2 years in a row, and it was the walk across the Brooklyn Bridge that kind of inspired me to say, hey, why don't we do it out here in Long Island? Coupled with other people saying, why do we need to go to Washington? Why do we need to go to Brooklyn? Why don't we do it right here? We have so many people that would be willing to come out. And in fact, we were pleasantly surprised with 1,000 people coming out to do the walk on the 30th.
It's also, from my point of view, when you have parents who have lost a child, to meet other parents, because we all know exactly what we're feeling, and there's nothing that you're feeling that would ever surprise me, and there's nothing that I wouldn't understand. So when you speak to other parents, not that they try to tell you that you're not feeling the right thing, but they have there's no sense of really what you are feeling. So it's been 3 months, you should move on. You know, that's not something that you should say. Or I've had people say, oh wow, you know, I've heard them say behind my back, didn't she lose her son? She's smiling. Life is still good every day of the week. Life is different for me every day every second of every day.
Right.
And I go through a myriad of emotions on any given day. And I have to always acknowledge, you know, sometimes I just stand there and I go, wow, my son is dead. Still, 3 years later. And 20 years from now, I probably will still be saying that because it's still a surreal moment in my life.
Right.
But I show up for life still because life is still good.
And you know, you were referring to the difference between sympathy and empathy, right? So one being that I haven't lost my child. So I can have an idea of what it would be like, but I haven't experienced it. So as much as I can hypothesize in my head, I haven't experienced. I haven't walked that walk. So I say that because, and the other thing I'll say is that people deal with things differently.
Without a doubt.
You know, you have two people who experienced the same loss of a child the same age, and people react with it very differently. And, you know, I did a lot of domestic violence work in my career, and I would be working with the abusers to try and get them to take a look at their behaviors and get them to change. And I remember one time somebody came in during a group session and he said, like, when is she going to get over it? He's like, you know, like okay, I said I was sorry. I made a mistake. I said I was sorry. When is she going to get over it? And I said to him, and it would be the same thing I would say, is that forgiveness is not on your timetable. It's on her timetable. And that's different for everybody.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing. There are people who perhaps 3-6 months later are able to function and go out there and start knocking down doors. And then there are people that unfortunately their process is different. And it doesn't mean that this person's right or that person's wrong. Everybody's process is their process, and their journey is their journey.
And every feeling that they had is valid, is what their feeling is. And you know, it's just embracing that person at where they are.
Right, where they are. That's exactly it. Yep.
Where they are. You may be there. You may still be there tomorrow.
Right.
Don't judge yourself, and don't judge the journey. Just, you know, a lot of parents say, you know, I have to stop crying, and I go, why? It's okay in the morning to start your day with a really good cry because your body needs that. And sometimes then you're willing because you can say, okay, I feel better. And you have to experience your grief because you can't hide it. You can't hide from it. You can't put it someplace else. But if I get from A to B with it, then I'm over here now, and I've moved through some of it, and every day that's different. And I mean, for me, one time on Tom's birthday, someone texted me and I said, I'm in my pajamas and I'm looking at my photographs. Don't do that to yourself today. Oh, no, I am going to do that to myself today because that's exactly where I need to be. It's not a bad thing for me to he was here. He lived a great life, and his life is so much bigger than his death, and I want to remember his life. So why wouldn't I want to look at his photographs? You know, and a lot of people, I think, try to say, you know, and I know there's so many things on Facebook, but my child was here, and you can say his name, and that's going to make me smile. And it make me smile and be mad and sad and cry all in the same breath.
Wow.
And that's okay. But he was here.
You know, what I find a lot of times it's really about the discomfort of the other person.
Oh, without a doubt.
So you know, let's just give a scenario. So let's say, for instance, you're crying about something that pains you, and I tell you, no, don't feel that way. It's really because I'm uncomfortable with seeing you crying, and I want to make it better. I'm feeling uncomfortable with it. And, you know, and sometimes people have a hard time separating their feeling from the other person's feeling.
It's the awkwardness of emotions.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll be right back after this message.
What are you looking for? You don't even know that. You don't even know. Are you on the ball list? So you can't even answer. I'm asking you about it. You gotta be highly skilled. You gotta be highly skilled. You understand that? Are you well versed there? Are you very smart man? Hit me with some funny shit.
My shit's twisted.
Tell me something. Tell me something.
What do you have right there?
That's awesome.
Well,
that's a big.
That's
nice.
You know damn well. You know damn well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's
Sir. Are you interested in twisted or not?
Yes, I am. Sure. See, you got twisted.
That's twisted. That's talent.
You see what I'm saying? You understand me? And if you can't whip out answers like that, that man is liable to go on a commercial break, punch your fucking mouth loose. You understand me? Time is up, sir. You understand me? You're on. You're the man. All right, give me your name now. I'm sorry.
My name is Willie.
Willie, where you working at?
We are twisted. We are awesome. Love it.
Can you repeat that question again?
You know you already want a Toyota, but when you want more from your Toyota store, you want Smithtown Toyota, where every Toyota comes with Smithtown Toyota's Toyota for Life program, giving you lifetime New York State inspections, lifetime 10% discounts on all parts and service, 2 years of complimentary oil changes, 2 years of scheduled maintenance, and more, all at no cost to you, plus low clear-out deals on every Toyota in stock. Get more from your Toyota store. Hurry to Smithtown Toyota.
Yo, what's up, y'all? This is me, DMC, in the place to be, the greatest MC in history. There will never be an MC greater than me. And right about now, the only place for you to be is with the one and only Madhousetv.
You are the man.
Okay. Welcome back to Long Island in Crisis. So Saturday, Fed Up Rally. There's many buses going from Long Island, actually from all over New York State. Any idea? So I know we could go to the FIST website, right, to find out a bus for Long Islanders.
Yeah, we have, I'm not sure if there is a link there, but I know that we had some information about the Fed Up Rally guiding them too. I would encourage people to go to the Fed Up website.
Okay.
Because they have a whole bunch of different links there of being able to hook up. As far as the other one.
It's not too late to go, right?
No. As far as the Unite to Face Addiction, I know that one, I know that Lyra, the Long Island Recovery Association, sponsored 2 buses. And at last count, I think there was about 10 seats left. So there still are some seats available. Now, with these buses, you're talking about going for the day. With the Lyra buses, no. It's fully sponsored. So the only thing is that you go down in the morning and you come back at night. It's an entire day. I'm not sure.
It's an exhausting day, but the experience is well worth. You can always sleep.
Absolutely. And then Monday is the advocacy day. So, you know, a bunch of us will be going to meet with congressmen and senators and trying to make a change on a federal level. We do a lot of work, you know, with FIST and Lyra and LICAT, and, you know, you're a rock star when it comes to this stuff, and Terry and, you know, a bunch of us that want to advocate for some change. But one of the things that's happening, and one of the things that we all are really interested in, is seeing this physician education. I think that's one that a lot of people are starting to get behind, and I believe it's going to happen this year. We were very, very close to it happening last year, and we came up just a little short.
Very disappointing. Yeah. And again, physicians are people.
Right.
So do no harm. Just get educated. All our children, every person living, breathing, walking is entitled to the best prescribing, best education that you can have to do the best for your patients.
Right.
And you should want that.
Yeah, and you know, and I have to tell you, I have a lot of friends that are physicians, and one particular physician that I'm thinking about called me up kind of in dire straits, you know, because his practice has skyrocketed to 40% of it being pain management. And, you know, he was giving out these crazy amount of medications. Again, he's a very old school, in his 70s, you know, thinking about, you know, like when people tell me this is what they're feeling, I believe them and this is what I do.
Yes.
His exact words to me were, when I went to med school, I didn't go to the police academy. So I don't know how to identify. And he said, but every day I'm seeing these different things that are happening with DEA and with Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, and I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing, and I try to take courses online. And so there are a lot of doctors that would welcome it.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, you know, there's a resistance, and what we're saying is not to do additional hours than what they already have to do. Just allocate 3 of those 50 hours that you have to do to addiction, pain management, and palliative care, and be part of the solution. I mean, look, let's face it, we're losing a life a day just here on Long Island. Wouldn't you want to know that you did, especially when so many professionals have said that the overprescribing of medications are part of the problem?
What if it's your child? What if it's your niece, your nephew, your loved one?
Yeah.
Let's start with that. You know,
yeah.
the golden rule.
Absolutely.
Treat others as you would want to be treated.
And I think, so hopefully on Monday, you know, we'll be able to get the ear.
Last week at the task force hearings, the doctor that came forward, and he was very eloquent in what he said. Pain is a good measurement of what's going on in your body.
Right.
So we don't want to mask it and take it away. We need to identify what's causing the pain.
Right.
And if you don't have pain, how do you know not to do the activity that's causing you the pain?
That's so great you said that. I worked with a director over in our Mineola office years ago, and she had a problem with her back. And then she was really hobbling. She was very, very, limited. And then we said, you taking any painkiller? She said, no, my doctor's really against it. He said, pain's your friend, because pain lets you know that when you bend this way, you're doing something that's causing more of a problem. Don't bend that way. And if you have the painkiller and it numbs it out, you keep doing things that make it worse. So to your point of what you're saying, the other thing I'll say is that, I commend that doctor so much, because the doctor that you're referring to was at an assembly minority hearing where they were taking testimony. And he stood up there in front of the cameras and in front of the recorders and said, this is who I am, and I just want to share my experience. And he got into the whole history about pain being classified as the 5th vital sign, and how doctors were being told at the time that they weren't treating pain appropriately, and they had to treat it appropriately. And he came out and said, look, there is a time and a place for opiates to be prescribed. I just think that it's being prescribed at times where it doesn't need to be prescribed.
Absolutely.
And the amounts that are being prescribed. I've said this, I sit on the Nassau County Heroin Task Force, and one of the first things that we collectively came up with was that there were too many pills being put out there. And at that time, one of the gentlemen who was on the task force said that he had had a root canal done, and that the doctor gave him a script for 90 Percocet. To me,
maybe you're going to take 2, but here goes back to the point, and actually I think it is United to Face Addiction put that commercial out where the grandparent goes to open the medicine cabinet and the teenager is behind there.
Right.
So we need to recognize that when you have these types of medications in your home, you are not the only one that's looking in your medicine cabinet.
Yeah, absolutely. Even people that I've heard people say to painters.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have a couple of minutes left, so we want to absolutely still tell people not too late to go to Washington, D.C., be part of the change, be part of the solution, get involved, because people are watching who's going to be there. So when you see, when the White House sees 40,000, 50,000 people, they also see 50,000 voters. So we do have a big voice. We're not going away.
And I just want to leave with one thought, to the people that are watching the show. Get involved. Find out who in your community is an organization that's involved in advocacy that you can join. I'll go back to FIST, Families in Support of Treatment. Our theory, right? Individually, our fingers are kind of weak. But when you bring them together in unity, there's strength. And it's so true that what we can't do alone as individuals, we can do it together. When we passed those, not we, but when we got those bills passed, it was because we all came together and were facing in one direction.
Absolutely. But even beyond that, when you get together with other people that are going through the same circumstances that you're going through, you may change somebody else's life and somebody may change yours. And it's awfully nice to be around people that can understand the insanity. If you're dealing with a loved one in the throes of addiction, no one understands that unless you've lived through it. No one can understand the absolute hell that you're living through. So it's nice to be able to commiserate, empathize, and sympathize with one another, and maybe share ideas of what worked in your home, what worked in my home. And, you may solve some of your other siblings, some of your other children. If we hold our ideas to ourselves, we have none. But when we're with a group of 10 people, we come away with 10 new ideas.
The interesting thing, Linda, a lot of times people try to help somebody else and they give of themselves, not realizing how much they're getting in return. That's not why they do it. In the fellowships, in the 12-step fellowships, they'll tell you you have to give it away to keep it. You can't keep it unless you give it away. And what they mean by that is that 12th step says you have to go now, having had this experience, you have to go and help somebody else. And when you're helping somebody else, right, a lot of times a person who is first starting out is uncomfortable asking somebody, can you help me? But the person says, me helping you allows me to get better. So that's the beautiful thing about this, is that
even in like we said, in an everyday world, if we do one nice thing a day,
there you go.
You feel like $1 million when you help somebody else. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening, especially you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Have a very safe journey this weekend.
And you too.
I am going away on vacation, and the next 2 weeks I have a special shows planned with a gentleman, huge advocate, Avi Israel from Buffalo, New York. So please tune in and check that out. He unfortunately also lost a son and is a staunch advocate and doesn't take no for an answer. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you all, and have a great, blessed week.
Another dark hotel